Greetings to everyone and welcome to one more event organized by University Gender Resource Center and TPO Foundation from Sarajevo during the 16 Days of Activism campaign 2023. And before we start, just to let you know that this event will be recording, and if you don't want to be shown in video, please turn off your camera and anonymize your identity. So this session is divided in two parts. The first is the introductory presentation by Christel with some of my questions, which will be around 25 to 30 minutes. And after that, we will have a chance to ask some questions. To be more efficient, you can pose questions in chat, or you can simply raise your hand to give a comment and suggest something. I'm honored to have Christel Gopin from United States, from George Mason University, who agreed to participate to this online event and help us to understand why self-care is important and why finding our voice also is important for us. I will just briefly introduce Christel. She's Associate Director of the Center for World Religions, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolution, the Jimmy and Rosalind School for Peace and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University. So this center is specialized in innovative international practices of conflict resolution and citizen diplomacy, education, seminars, field experiences, and business or organizational consultancies. Christel is also the co-founder and the director of the Institute for Conflict Healing, which specializes in helping individuals, groups, and organizations to build compassionate human relations and communities. Christel is pursuing her master's in reconciliation and peace building with an emphasis on religion at the University of Winchester in the United Kingdom. She has facilitated many activities, women peer support groups in multiple countries around the globe. And she also guided the center classes in many countries like Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we are happy to have her here. She is very experienced and she has over 25 years of successful leadership and administration of large institutions with complex work setting, building positive team working relationships. As a trainer and workshop facilitator, Christel has introduced hundreds of participants in a broad range of continuing education courses for professional development. So today, this discussion will be focused on women and how to uplift them as change agents in order to address and successfully confront gender-based violence. And since we are in the middle of 16 Days of Activism campaign, it is important also to tackle this topic and to learn from Christel. Christel, welcome to this online session.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for this discussion and participation to this event. And my first question for you would be to start with that, to try to explain to us why self-care is important and why we neglect it and how to take care of ourselves.
So yes, so first of all, again, thank you for having me. It's an honor. I almost feel like I'm coming home. I really love Bosnia and hopefully I can come back in the summer next year. So I put more and more emphasis on self-care because personally I first recognized that while I was doing all these different things and all my different roles as a woman, both, in the family, as a mother, as, a spouse, a daughter, but also at work, and then the friends, and then also all the activities that you privately volunteer for. It's like you go, but then you take care of everybody else, but you kind of neglect yourself. So I thought I had initially it was my problem, that's just how I ticked. But, as I was talking to, other women, and then what became evident in COVID is that where women were actually pushed in the forefront of having to do most of the caregiving, whether it was in family or in the communities, even at work at times, with the roles that they had, it became very evident that self-care is actually, we are very poor at it. We take care of everybody else, but we neglect ourselves. So out of that came the idea that maybe what we should be doing is, and I work with a organization, the Alamana Center in Muscat, Oman, where we put women together. And the idea was for me to put them together in a peer support format. So at least we would have a space, a safe space for us to come together and talk about what's going on in our life and learn about this thing called self-care. And so I have done that in multiple countries. And one of the things that, came out of it is not just wanting to learn about this, but then also wanting to learn about this in relation to the other important topic that everybody wanted to cover was gender-based violence, because it was a factor, indirectly or direct, in most women's lives. So, what does it mean to have self-care? I think the first thing is to recognize when it comes to the importance, of people, that everybody is a human being, so are you. And so your importance is vital in whatever you do. So if you don't take good care of yourself, and that includes physically, that includes mentally, that also includes, spiritually, self-care, and even dealing with your emotions and, socially. So if we don't take care of all this difference there that we actually need to be touching, to get to a healthy self, you are going to, you might be doing great at work. And I work with a lot of peace builders, for example, but eventually, because of the impossible task, and COVID showed us how difficult it is because nobody had a magic pill. And even now we don't have a magic pill. We have, immunizations that might, reduce the severity of COVID, but COVID is still around. So there's a burnout factor, in not being able to have this magic build of solving the problem and then moving on. And in relationship to, gender-based violence, we can't just wish it away. We actually have to actively think about it and work at it. And I would say it's something that each one of us, needs to be addressing, whether you, a woman or you're a man, it impacts all of us. So, what I did is, with my partners, what we did is we kind of focused on, a 10 session course, and in that 10 session, I really wanted to first focus on making ourselves, so you, the center, and then also finding the center with each other, the group. So that is very, very important, because one of the things is that you don't want to it sounds so simple, but knowing that you are not alone, going through your struggles, going through your hardship, going through these questions, right? Or not, that you're not alone in this thing called being human being, is actually so important, and there's comfort in it. And there's also strength when you actually experience this with other people. So that was one of the first thing. And then I wanted to heavily root it in self-compassion, because as women, we are told to have compassion for someone else, and we actually are very, very good at it. You know, most of us are, you know, we see a hurt animal, you know, we want to pick it up and heal it. We see a child that cry, we want to pick up the child and comfort the child. So we're actually very good at it. But the one thing we are not good at is self-compassion. And self-compassion is needed. And I can't emphasize how many times I heard women say that they feel if they take time for themselves, that that is actually selfish. You know, it's taking away from the time that they actually could show compassion to somebody else. But again, you are the center. Without you being the center and having a healthy sense of well-being, and again, you know, mentally and physically and who you are not going to be as effective and in the endurance without it. So it is also important to bring in resilience for us, how to stay resilient, how to not give up, because there are lots and lots of demands based on us. And so to keep going. And then the other thing I emphasized in self-care is also learning good, healthy coping skills. You know, not just with your stress, but with actual things that are going on within yourself, but also with others in the world. Sometimes you can do something about it, but there's also the times where we can do very little or nothing. But there's still a way of how we can look at it as far as how, you know, our attitude and how we can respond to it. And I always say, okay, if you have a roadblock here, right, is it movable? Can I go over, under, or, you know, around? And if not, where's my detour, and what else can I do? You know, so having different techniques or different, you know, the creativity, imagination, you know, all that also I believe belongs into self-care, to where you actually learn how to trust yourself. You listen to your inner voice. And so what's very, very important is self-reflection, you know, and it's not self-reflection. People always think that, oh, you mean I need to really look at my weaknesses and, you know, what I don't have, my mistakes, and really criticize myself. But self-examination means taking a whole picture of you. And the goal is not to judge yourself, but the goal is to get to know yourself, right? To understand yourself, to know what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable. You know, what are your triggers, for example, when it comes to stressful situation, you know, and then learning how to cope with it. So, and part of the self-examination, I'm speaking of coping skills, but what I also have done is I introduced my husband, is Dr. Mark Gopin. So he came up with an 8-step to address, you know, he calls it conflict healing, and I really believe in it. These are 8 simple steps to actually look at a conflict, which starts with self-examination, but then also takes in consideration emotions and feelings, you know, of yourself, of the other, you know, to see and hear everything, and to put it all together, and then actually have imagination and thinking about what are you going to say, and more importantly, what are you going to do? So all this, you know, there's a lot of work in this, but all this centers around this whole concept of well-being. That again, we basically, you know, people always talk about peace. Well, what is peace? We look for peace outside, but peace also has to happen within. So you actually have to figure out, what does it mean to have, you know, to build a sanctuary within yourself, where you actually become the caregiver, the caretaker of your own self, you know, well-being, and your health, you know, again, mental, physically, spiritual, in all these good things. And so, and in that, the better you know yourself, you know, the better it is to actually figure out what you want, and also to get this thing called self-confidence, you know, because life is not easy. We all face difficulties, but to actually have the self-confidence then to, you know, to discover your voice, to speak with your own voice, and then also to be, you know, really a change agent by following up your talk with the walk, so to speak. So again, I feel that this is very, very important, and this is something that is, you know, important for ourselves, but collectively, especially as women, as we face all these difficulties based on our gender, and, you know, gender-based violence is the ultimate thing. But there's also this thing about, you know, changing the roles of society. I mean, it could be that you know, a girl, she wants to be the astronaut. She doesn't want to be a, you know, a school teacher. So should she be denied the ability to be the astronaut, or should we encourage that? Because she has the talent, the skills, and the really determination to do that. So should she be able to enter, you know, a field that is dominantly in the past has been dominated by men? You know, can she do that? And how can we support her journey? You know, so as parents, as fellow women, and, you know, how can we go on and actually allow slowly chipping away into a society that sees each other as human beings, and also sees each other as equal, because that's just how, you know, life is, and it really benefits all of us.
Thank you, Christel. You mentioned something very important, that to learn and to know that we are not alone really matters. And we know today that loneliness is like an epidemic all around the world, and it can also cause people to feel empty, unwanted, scared, and in that state of mind, it is really difficult for people to find a way. So how to be self-reflective, and how to do self-examination, and how to take care of yourself if you are really alone. And specifically, I mean, if you are raised in a culture where you are not trained and socialized to take care of yourself, you don't have the skills. I mean, we should learn how to do that. And if you are not, and specifically in some patriarchal cultures, when women started to take care of themselves, they are described as selfish, arrogant, self-centered, etc. So how to fine-tune and line, you know, between the two, are to really take care of ourselves, but not to be recognized as those who are self-centered or selfish. What do you suggest?
So yes, those are important questions, because a lot of times we don't have the mechanism or the outreach, or we kind of stuck, as you said, in the role that we are placed in, or the worlds that we are placed in. So you know, it's hard to reach out, you know, to other women. But this is why I really wanted to do not just a workshop. I didn't want to just do a training. I wanted to do this through peer support. And the reason for the peer support is that together, and this is very important, you know, I come in as the facilitator. I do not come in as the expert of women's life. They are the expert. So to actually recognize that they have the wisdom within them, and each woman has the wisdom, and together they have the wisdom, and they know how to address their situation the best. It's not me from the outside. I can come up with some ideas. I can come up with some help, but it's up for women to actually start embracing themselves and each other. So the reason why I did this through the peer support, first of all, it's informal, but it is a safe space. We agree that, this is a safe space where you can actually come and you can bring your thoughts and there's no judgment. There might not be an answer. You don't need an answer if you don't want it, but to really have a space where you can reach out to someone else, share that space, and together then, get to know what this thing is called as to life, in your community. So, and then the thing is about the wonderful thing about peer support, and it doesn't have to be a big group. It can even just be one other person, right? But having someone as a mentor, as a supporter, as an encourager, as a helper, and having someone who actually you can contact and you can actually cry on, her shoulders, and reach out and unite, even just not having, sometimes there's nothing you can say, but even a hug is a form of communication. It's a powerful communication. So is a smile. We forget about how 80% of our communication is actually nonverbal. This is important. And in the peer support format is that, even when I come in and I generated, but once I'm gone, they can continue. The relationships that have been built in that group, that have been formed, that have been, built on trust and getting to know one another, they can continue. So, and it might not be that everybody does it, but, I have found that a significant portion of the women continue in that relationship. So, and then it's also about, as women, I will say this, that sometimes when we say we are facing, gender expectation and also limitation, and sometimes, we have hard things to, we have a hard job changing that, to making more gender equality and equity. Sometimes we have to also admit that as women, we can be part of the problem. That's a hard realization, but we have to actually look at ourselves, and this is where self-examination is so important. We have to ask ourselves, how do we contribute to this divide, right? So, for example, as a mother, I love my child. I want the best for my child. I want to support my child. Am I helping both my daughter and my son equally, right? Am I allowing my daughter and my son to see each other, as human beings? And then is that going to carry forward? For example, in schools, what are we doing in kindergarten? My first career actually was in kindergarten. And so the boys and the girls, ages 3 to 6, when you brought them together, it wasn't really about being a boy or girl. It was about, learning what friendship means, learning what caring for another means, learning how to figure out problems together. So the emphasis was not, here you're a boy and here you're a girl, and this is how you're supposed to, behave. But to come up and actually think about, what does it mean, to be human, and what does it mean to actually gain the skills for you to have, a happy, successful life. So I think it's very important to actually also for us women, and to look out for women in our inner circles, especially, but also communities, is who is isolated, and it's not like you can just contact them and they will come and, join you, but you can reach out and you can say, I see you, I care. I'm here if you would like to, talk. So offering that helping hand is very, very important with no expectation of anything in return. So
it also means that we should be emotionally mature enough and also ready to express our emotions. And in many cultures, this is not the case. So this is sometimes really hard part, to show vulnerability and then to say, hey, I see you, I'm here for you. So it takes time for people to learn that. You said that finding our own voice really matters, and especially it's relevant to when we are facing gender-based violence and other sorts of discrimination. So what are the ways of finding our voice? How we can do that? You said there is no magic tricks, but is there anything we can learn, to really find our own voice, not to be frozen, not to fly away, but really to look inside ourselves and then find our voice?
Yes, I think the first voice that is most important is actually your inner voice. So that's your inner voice that you actually listen to the most. So we always think we are impacted by environment, what we can and can't do, what we are told, and how should we talk, how should we walk, what should we what are duties and responsibilities for being a woman, and and we also need to start thinking about girls. So, but what is that? And then really being comfortable to hear your own voice, not in a critical voice, because in the sense that it starts into you start into judging yourself, you start into not believing in yourself because you don't trust your own voice. You become you think you can't do it, and it might be really tough to do it, but you think it's impossible. And it also takes courage and resilience. And so finding your own voice is and it's actually I call it a daily struggle, because one of the things that I tend to do in the morning is kind of recenter myself and think about, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing today? And there's what you do for everybody else, but then is what am I doing for myself? And it can't just be 5 minutes. It's not a huge chunk of time, but what am I doing for Christel, so to speak? How am I helping Christel to get to know Christel, right? So, and then, so as you go through the day, and especially at the end of the day, is to evaluate what happened. What did I say? What did I do? How did I react? And getting to know, who is this person called Christel, and who am I today? And who was I yesterday? Who am I today? And who do I want to be, tomorrow? So this continuing journey. And so this self-examination, I really can't emphasize it strong enough to I always say, let's be comfortable getting uncomfortable, right? Because it's not an easy thing to do. So then also it comes again back to finding other voices. And we tend to we tend to lean towards people that speak like us. But it's also important to hear people that don't speak like us. So being open and this continuous process of learning. We think maybe we are going to the university, we are getting a degree, and that's it. But the truth is, learning doesn't stop. learning stops with the last breath you take. So it's a life journey. And it's this thing called about, you know, what is life all about, and how can we actually, you know, what is our part, our tiny part in actually making it a positive contribution, a positive change. So finding that voice, and also saying that, you know, some people are very good at advocating for children. That's in their heart, that's in their psyche. That's what they should utilize as to maybe focusing on that area. Other people might be more comfortable advocating for animals, you know, then that's, you know, so learning what really makes you tick, and learning this thing called what's your passion. You know, passion, you know, using passion as a woman always has other, but really, what is our passion? What are we passionate about? What do we want to see, you know, in our families, in our communities, in the world? What do we want to see? And then focusing, you know, using that with your talents and your skills, and to keep learning, and not only finding your voice, but then strengthening your voice, you know, because every single time you speak, it might not go the way you wanting it to go, but every single time you use your voice, it's a learning opportunity, right? You're learning what works, what didn't in that situation, and you can take lessons learned and apply it, you know, for the next time you speak. So this is a continuous process. And again, I will emphasize for us to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
As you said, it's easy to say, but it's not easy to do it, you know, to really be comfortable with everything what we learn, and then in our lives that makes us uncomfortable. So is it possible to protect ourselves from discrimination and gender-based violence if we are not able to find our voice? Can we be successful in that process?
I think yes, of course, if there are mechanisms wherever you are, you know, I mean, different places have different mechanism. You know, some have made great progress in addressing gender-based violence, and they actually have, you know, institutions. They have, like, you know, for example, domestic shelters. In other countries, there are no domestic shelters to go to. But there are, you know, some countries have not only developed, you know, policies and procedures and laws, but they also have developed the mechanism to act upon them. So when you come forward, you know, with, for example, I was attacked, that, you know, they take that seriously and they investigate immediately, and, you know, try to take care of it within the framework of law, and, you know, and prosecution, whatever comes out of it. So, but I would say, you know, my personal opinion is, it's very difficult. Finding your voice also means that you have found yourself. Not all of it, because we keep evolving, we keep growing, but you found yourself enough to know that this is important to you, right? That this matters to you, and not just to you, but this is important as, you know, when you talk about gender-based violence, we don't just talk about gender-based violence because we don't want it to happen to us. We talk about gender-based violence because we don't want this to happen to, you know, anybody else, girls, you know, girls and women, but also not to boys and men, because gender-based violence impacts them too. Having that reality that no one should be assaulted, no one should be hurt, no one should be harassed or discriminated against. That's important. So, yes. So I would say, the better we are in finding our voice and learning to speak our own voice. That's too, because you also do not want to be, you know, a carbon copy of someone else. To actually be authentic And authentic means that maybe you are not as polished as somebody else. You know, there's always this comparison that we do, that we have to look as pretty, have to speak as well. You know, we have to have all these skills. No, 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 no. You need to, finding your voice means you bring your authentic self to the table, you know, and you can speak through your authentic self, who you are, you know, and that's the most powerful, I feel that's the most powerful way of speaking. And also, you know, when I think about how can we change things, our stories matter. Your story matters. So if you're going through an experience or you know of something indirectly and you're telling that story, I often think about how do we really change the mindset? You know, that's the biggest problem, because actually we can easily develop policies and procedures. We can easily form commissions and work on gender-based violence and say, okay, here's what's wrong with our situation. You know, here are some, you know, solutions. Here's what we need to do. It's easy to actually develop policies and procedures. It's even not as easy. Implementation is tough. Enforcement is tough. But that doesn't necessarily get to the change of the mindset, the change of the heart, you know? And so I think, for example, storytelling, touching people's minds and heart is important. And again, you need your voice for that. And the more authentic you are, I think the greater you have a chance of actually touching other people's minds and hearts.
Yeah, our story matters, but in our culture, for instance, there is a great book that came to my mind right now, published by Women's Studies in Serbia, with the title, I Don't Have Anything to Tell You, stories from women who usually starts saying, okay, I don't have anything important to tell you, so my story is not so important. There is nothing interesting, and then they tell you a really great story. So this is something really culturally driven, you know, that women minimize their lives, their stories, and who they are. And as you said, it really matters. So we need to encourage both women and men to tell their stories and to discover their X factor, really who they are and who they can be. Now I think it's the time to give a chance to other participants to jump in, ask questions, to suggest if there's something to suggest, and please, floor is open for your questions. We don't want to wait for long, but I hope some of you have some questions and something you want to ask Christel, or you simply can write your question in chat if you don't want to speak, so we can read it.
And also just make comments, you know.
Yeah, or comments, or
just make comments.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
If something moved you, please share.
Yep. Is your story important? You can tell us. Maybe some of you can tell us, what do you think? What about your own stories? I keep going back to the culture in which we live. It really matters how we are shaped by socialization, and especially women, not to emphasize who they are. And Javada raised her hand. Javada, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure to attend this lecture. Honestly, I was expecting a little bit more focus on gender-based violence, but nonetheless, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. So you are now in the US. You have visited here in Bosnia. You talked, I guess, to some women here in Bosnia. So what would be your advice, next to the fact that you mentioned that we have to care about ourselves, that we need our space, what you just mentioned, but what would you advise us women here in Bosnia and Herzegovina when it comes to gender-based violence, how to address it? And as Professor Zilka just mentioned, that it's a cultural issue here, that women are still hesitant to talk about their experiences because there is this societal stigma. And it's indeed, it's a way, I'm not talking from, so to say, from a female Islamic perspective, that it is socially, culturally not correct, not accepted to talk about violence, to talk about violence in families, violence in pious families, and about gender-based violence. There's a stigma of being immediately labeled as feminist, which is a negative connotation here, and then and it's an upside down, you know, that it is not okay to talk about violence, not to to get divorced, but it's okay, you know, violence is sort of accepted, even if it's purely religiously seen, it is absolutely unacceptable, it is not allowed, but nonetheless, the kind of the standards have totally switched, it's upside down. So how to address this? I'm still kind of, Zilka always criticizes me that I'm too hesitant to talk about this, to write about this, and I'm still kind of getting mature in this whole area.
You are still finding your own voice in this matter.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Zilka.
Thank you,
Gerard. I hope I was clear somehow. It's just, you know, you can see how my mind is kind of confused. So yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, that's a great question.
Mm-hmm. So you actually have a really good, strong voice, and those are excellent questions. And so, and again, this is about, you know, this is about finding it, and not just because you found your voice doesn't mean you have the possibility of necessarily speaking it where everybody will just listen. So, so the trick is, I call it to figure out how to rock the boat, but don't sink the boat, right? So because one of the things is we still have to make sure that when we speak and when we act, that we don't cause harm to ourselves and to others. So there is this thing that we have to be careful, and that's also a constraint. You know, that's a constraint. And so taking inventory of our situation, where we are at, what we are facing as to gender-based violence in our own community, whether it's, you know, cultural, whether it's, you know, tribal, whether it's religious, or whether it's just, you know, I call it bad habits. Because sometimes, you know, bad habits are, you know, we say it's biological, and it says, well, we've done this stuff for generations. So I'm not sure it's biological. I think it's more of we grew bad habits and we just keep repeating them. So changing habits is extremely difficult. But here's the thing, and this is why I think I want to go back to self-care, and I want to go back to resilience, and I also want to go back to finding a way to actually address the conflict, because gender-based violence is a conflict. To me, it's a conflict. So having techniques that allow you to handle, you know, your path, your journey in it, is very, very important. So this is, you know, for example, I just, you know, you talk to Silka. That's already an important connection point. Being here is an important connection point. And finding, you know, when I say taking inventory, I think it's not just inventory as to, you know, for example, when it comes to the glass ceiling that we have to fight in work. You know, glass ceilings is a form of, you know, gender-based violence for me too, because first of all, you're not going to allow me in, you know, or, you know, hire me because I'm female, and then you're going to hire me, but then you're not going to pay me the same as a man because I'm female for the same job. You know, that's a problem. You know, that's a real problem, and that is a problem, you know, in the West, so to speak, and, you know, countries that make great things. You know, I think one of the things too is to think about, you know, and there are different aspects to it, because, you know, my husband, who's, you know, conflict analysis and resolution expert, he doesn't necessarily believe in protests. But I think there are ways that we as women can protest that might be effective. And the one thing is, in protesting, is again not speaking just singular as a woman, or, you know, or a couple of women, but finding more and more women to speak together, but also to have men join us who also recognize that gender-based violence is not a good thing for nobody. You know, so looking upon it is, you know, we want to say this is just a female, you know, this is just for us and we have to do the hard work. No, it's actually for us all to do the hard work. So finding what I call the friendlies, you know, who actually believe that something must change, and somehow coming together and then figuring out together what it is that you can do to fight gender-based violence in your circumstances, in your situation. Again, I think it's a process. There are steps that take a long time, but steps that must be taken. So, for example, I think we need to start with the children. We need to start with education. We need to start making it part of the curriculum, right? So from kindergarten, you know, first grade, all the way through college. I think it needs to be in college too. But then also there needs to be the education that happens in the workplace. A reminder through the code of conduct, for example, that this is behavior, you know, whether it's verbal or physical, we will not tolerate. This is unacceptable. So I always say the trick ultimately will be to switch it, to make it the norm, that when it comes to gender-based violence, we are, you know, it rubs us the wrong way automatically. It's unacceptable. So this is where we hopefully, you know, figure out to make it unacceptable, you know, and, you know, there is, you know, for example, I was working in a country in Botswana, and with gender-based violence experts, and they actually created a police unit to work on, you know, gender-based violence issues. So to pull this expertise together and to start the conversation, so not only, and to learn from each other, both from an activist standpoint, but then also from a law enforcement standpoint, and then also because I recognize the importance of religious leaders, you know, and actors, to pull those people in too and have a conversation, because in many places, you know, when religion is important, you have to have the actors, you know, you have to have enough actors on your on your boat, you know, so you can rock that boat together and get to shore. So so I would definitely take inventory, think who my persons are that are already on board, and then who is on the outskirt that I can get in, and then figuring out, again, this is about, you know, collective effort. You know, I mean, not anyone here in this group or anybody else in the world, not one person can change gender-based violence. It's a collective effort.
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize that it's not our individual responsibility. We have individual responsibility really to take care of ourselves and also to raise our voices against gender-based violence. and we have sometimes we have more space for that, or we believe that we can change it either with some protest, as you said, or with some writings. I did it recently. I criticized gender-based violence authorities. And then you know what's happened? Some people told me, okay, oh, this is too much. You'll face backlash. And I said, let's be it. I mean, I'm ready because I'm not afraid of anything. But something really great happened because the guy I quoted for his misogynist interpretation of the Quran wrote to me and said, I changed my mind. Please, can you publish my new article about it? And
who was this? Excuse me.
Hafiz Zaimovich.
Okay.
Yeah, he said, I changed my mind. I wrote another article and I don't interpret that particular Quranic text anymore in the way I used to do it. So can you please share it? Which is really great. And also after that, we talked about other issues. And he said, he admitted basically that there are so many questions within the community that should be changed, should be addressed. But he also was very critical towards women's groups within the community. He said they are completely hesitant and not vocal at all about these issues, and they should be. So I believe that we can make some changes, and as you said, we should get connected to one another, to give support to one another, but also we have responsibility to go against gender-based violence. Some of us cannot go to protest or write some articles, but we can do at least be there for one another, to listen and to provide support. You know, it depends how much strength and resilience we have. So yeah, it is possible. I still believe in it, and even if nothing happened right now, maybe in 10 years someone will say, okay, it's time to change it. So we simply should not be silent about this. We should be vocal and not to be terrified to be labeled as feminists or women who destroy tradition and family, which is usually, you know, the discourse that follows women who raise their voices loudly and in public and criticize discriminatory practices.
Silka, there is a question in chat. I don't know if you can see it. It's very
Can you read it, please, Lamia?
So it says, thank you for this lecture. It is really inspirative. How do you suggest to motivate women to speak out and report violence? We are witnesses of reporting violence and women being killed after that. How to encourage women?
Okay. So my first thought is, you know, this is the difficult thing that, again, there's a thing on how do we rock the boat so we don't turn it over, because we do not want to cause harm to anybody else and to ourselves either. There's, you know, how do we do this? And sometimes, you know, depending on the situation, this is extremely difficult to do. So I was just thinking, you know, this is a great example, Silka, that you cited, and we need to talk about this because you had the success that I said, because a lot of times when we don't speak up and we don't reach out, we are not reaching anybody. But if we speak, you know, up and out, we can reach somebody, and that somebody can actually then, you know, it's like I say, it's like building a club. We have one more member in our club, and we have one more collective. You know, the collective then is stronger. So one of the things I was thinking about too is, you know, what to do right now in this situation if it happens. What do we do right now if it happens to, you know, a family member or a friend or a work relative? How are we going to embrace, you know, that person? So one of the things I was thinking about how important it was is to embrace that person by standing with the person, right? Even if we don't know all the facts, and even if we don't know where 100% of the truth lies, but to stand with the person. And so I was thinking about, you know, what if we, for example, worked on a mentoring system, a buddy system, to where we said, you know what, this happened to so and so, you know, this person got harassed, you know, and then really reach out and just be there for this person. And sometimes we don't, you know, we don't have the resources, or we can't say, you know, I can, you know, I can ensure that this will be investigated and fully prosecuted, and the perpetrator will come to the full, you know, will be sentenced, you know, and get the sentence they deserve, he or she deserves. We can't necessarily do it, but we can be there just for emotional support, you know, just to say you are not alone. Remember, we started out saying how important it is to know that you're not alone. So, and in this support of each other, that maybe something also, you know, maybe this will take on and something can happen in the community, that it becomes more of a way of being, a way of doing, you know, because again, the question is, how can we touch people, not just minds, but also how can we touch their hearts? And so they see a better alternative and they join us in embracing that.
Thank you, Christel. Are there any more questions in chat? How do you, there is one more. How do you suggest to motivate women? Oh, this is the one. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's it. So I think we should conclude this session. Thank you, Christel, for a wonderful conversation we had and what we learned from you. And I think we should all bring with us from this session that we should find some time to look at ourselves and then to find our voices, not be too judgmental and to criticize all the time that we are not good enough, or to have imposter syndrome, but simply, you know, to be kind, to be compassionate, as you said. And also to be there for others, specifically those who experience any type of discrimination or gender-based violence. I would like to thank you on behalf of University Gender Resource Center and TPO Foundation, and I hope we'll have a chance to host you in Sarajevo again and to learn from you and your expertise.
Thank you so much, and I am learning as you know, as I'm attending. So I love you know, our discussion. So thank you for, you know, letting me be here and also letting me learn. Thank you very much, and I look forward to coming. So let's continue the conversation. Let's continue the good fight.
Yes, thank you. So now we can conclude the session and stop recording.